is up, guys? My name is Lex. We are back here at Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, getting ready to play a 5-10 session, buying in for $2,500, which is the max. This first hand, there's a button straddle to 25. The big blind calls, and under the gun position with pocket sevens. Instead of raising here, I decide to call, and I think a lot of the time I should be raising this up, but because it's a straddle pot, I decided to just call. Back over here to the button, who puts in a raise to $200. I played with this guy a couple times and he is action. So let's see a flop. Heads up here in a $400 plus pot. At the Hard Rock, we see Jack 6-7, all hearts, flopping bottom set. I check and flow over to the initial raiser and he checks back, and we get a terrible turn card of the Queen of Hearts. We flop the set and now there's 4 hearts on the board. Any heart will make a flush. I check again. He bets $125, which doesn't make too much sense. I would assume that he would be c-betting with all of his ace X, king X of heart hands on the flop. It's possible he has a hand like pocket 8s or pocket 9s with a heart in it. So I decided to make the call, hoping to boat up on the river, which we do not. It's the deuce of spades, a complete brick. I check again, and now he throws out a $300 bet. And now I have to figure out, should I hero call this guy with a set, or should I let my hand go? When betting on this river with 4 hearts, he's basically saying he has the ace high flush or the king high flush. He didn't c-bet the flop, which I feel like he would if he did have the ace of hearts or the king of hearts, either for value or for a semi-bluff. I don't think he's going to be betting this river with smaller hearts like the 8 of hearts, the 9 of hearts, or the 5 of hearts. So after thinking for a little bit of time, this guy's capable of bluffing. I throw in the chips and he shows ace 5 with no heart for a bluff. We show the pocket sevens for a set and we're good. My last video I shared with you guys that I was on an $18,000 downswing since June 1st, but luckily since I've been back here in Florida, I've won 3 out of 4 of the sessions that I played, and now we're already up over $500 within the first 10 minutes of our session. Picking off a bluff here with a set. Let's move on to the next hand. Throughout this session, we play a ton of pots with a player who just tried to bluff me last hand. We're going to call him seat number 7, and he is giving a ton of action. He raises here in the hijack to 30. The button calls 30. I 3-bet the small blind with ace-queen offsuit to 125. The hijack player in seat number 7 makes the call, and the button makes the fold. Heads up to an ace-high board. I bet small here, $75, and he calls. Turns a king. I size up to $300, and this time he folds. Getting dealt in a pretty hand next up here. Ace of spades, 10 of spades under the gun. I do my standard raise size of $35, and then action player on the button repops me to 200. He's got about $1,000 left in his stack, and against a ton of people, I would just fold ace 10 suited versus a $200 raise with a short stack. But against this guy, he's given a ton of action, so I want to give him back some of that action as well. I make the call and we flop top 2 pair on ace 10-9 2 clubs. I check and unfortunately he checks back. The turn 4 spades and I decide to check to him again, and now he throws out a $175 bet. When playing out of position against a very aggressive player, sometimes it's good to slow play, give them some rope, let them do what they like to do and put out a bluff. As we saw in the first hand, this guy is definitely not afraid to put in some bluffs here on the turn of the river. When he bets 175 though, I want to try to get all of his money, so I think I got to put in a raise. I don't want to go too big. I make it $325, and then the dealer corrects me that it must be a $350 min raise, so I throw out the extra $25 as well. By min raising here with a short stack, I'm hoping he will just feel committed on the river and call down with any kind of pair that he's got. So he makes the call. We see the jack of hearts on the river. Now this does bring in king-queen for a straight, and it also can improve him to a better 2 pair with ace-jack, but with only $600 left, definitely can't be checking a good hand like this, so I put him all in, and he snap folds. Moving forward, where I get dealt in my favorite hand in poker, ace-king offsuit. Just kidding, I freaking hate this hand. I feel like I always lose with it. Under the gun, raises to $60, who's a pretty tight player. Under the gun +1 calls, and versus this sizing with ace-king, I actually felt like I should just call, but I didn't want to call and have everyone else behind me call as well, so I decided to 3-bet to 225 to try to isolate, and that doesn't work. Seat number 7 action player makes the call for 225. Under the gun calls, and under the gun +1 calls as well. 4 ways in a 3-bet pot over $1,000 in the middle with ace king, and we see a board of 3, 7, 8 rainbow. A terrible flop for us. Under the gun leads out now for $450. He's got about $2,000 left. If under the gun +1 folds, I actually contemplate jamming all in here just because I think under the gun's going to have pocket 10s or jacks when he takes this line. But once under the gun +1 calls, there's really not much I can do. So I make the fold. They end up getting here to the river where under the gun shows pocket jacks, and under the gun +1 flopped a set of 3s and wins a pretty big pot. During this session, I picked up a ton of huge hands, and it starts off now with pocket queens in the big blind. Under the gun limps for $10. Action player in seat number 7 raises to $35. I go $150 with a 3-bet. Under the gun limper folds, and the action player seat 7 makes the call. Heads up to 6, 5, 3, 2 clubs. I decide to check over to him for reasons that I stated earlier, allowing him to bluff, but he checks back. Turn card deuce of clubs, a terrible card. Now any 4 will make a straight, and there's flushes out there. I check, and he throws out a $100 bet, and I make the call. The river card's the 10 of diamonds. I check. He checks back and shows ace 8 of spades for nothing at all. We show the queens, and we're good. This pot is pretty small and insignificant, but I do think it does show that by playing hands a little bit different, you can get your opponents to do things that they may not normally do. Let's say I just c-bet on the flop for a big sizing. He would just fold his ace 8 of spades on that board, but by checking, I got another $100 out of him. I've been playing now for around 2 hours. I'm in the game for $2,500, sitting on $3,400, up about $900. This hand is a straddle pot, $25 under the gun. The button makes it $75 with pocket 10s in the small blind. I decide to call this time. We're going heads up to 5, 7, 8 rainbow. With an overpair on this board, I lead out for $75. Basically just trying to get him to fold all of his over cards that may have equity. Hands like King Jack, King Queen, or Queen Jack. He decides to make the call, and we see the ace of spades on the turn. Now this card's going to be a lot better for his raising range than my calling range and leading out on the flop. So I check over to him, and he bets $200. By betting this turn card, he's telling the story. He has a hand like ace king, ace queen, possibly ace 7, ace 5, or ace 8. I don't believe him just yet. I do think he could be trying to bluff here. So I make the call, and we see the 8 on the river pairing the board. A very interesting spot now. I should have a lot more 8s in my range than he should. Let's say he did have an 8 on the turn. I don't think he's going to be betting for $200 when the ace comes out. So I contemplate turning my pocket 10s into a bluff, leading out here huge on the river, trying to get him to fold a hand like ace 5, ace 7, ace queen, or ace king. But after thinking for a while, I think my hand is just way too strong to turn into a bluff on this board. So I check. He instantly checks back. He tells me he's got king high. We show the 10s, and they're good. We have got a big one here coming up. Under the gun straddles for $25. Hijack limps for $25. I have pocket kings in the under the gun $25 straddle. The button, the seat number 7. Action player makes it $125. He has about $2,000 in his stack, which is less than 100 big blinds with the straddle on. So instead of going a 4x raise size out of position, I just make it $375. Only 3x here. With pocket kings, we definitely want some action. In action we get, he ends up making the call heads up, out of position to jack 3-4 rainbow. A pretty great board. It's super dry and unconnected, so I bet small $225, hoping he's going to call with all of his straight draws, his gut shots, his smaller pairs, ace high, and top pairs. He calls, and we see the 6 on the turn. My opponent has about $1,300 left. I think betting the turn and then shoving the river is the best play a lot of the time with our hand, but I like to play a little bit different. I don't want my opponents to easily play against me. Let's say I bet again here on the turn, and he has a hand like pocket 8s. He may let that hand go, but if I check to him, he could possibly bet that hand for protection. By checking, I can also allow him to bluff as well with hands that he floated me with here on the flop. So I decide to check here on the turn, and he does decide to bet a $250 bet. Now against this sizing, I actually don't think he has a top pair holding. I also don't think he has a bluff either. I think he'd be going a little bit bigger if he was bluffing. I do think he has a smaller pocket pair to the board, like pocket 7s, 8s, 9s, or 10s, that he's betting here for protection, thinking I have a hand like ace-king or ace-queen, and he's probably going to check back every single river. So my plan here is to call the turn and then jam all in on any river other than a jack or an ace with over $1,700 in the middle. We see a 6 on the last card. It pairs the board. It's a great card for us, and I'm going to stick with the plan here. After thinking for about 20 seconds, I decide to put him all in for the rest of his $1,000, and he doesn't snap fold right away, and he doesn't snap call either, which is great, which means we have the best hand. He goes into the tank for a while. Over 2 minutes of him thinking. He keeps looking over at me. I'm trying to stay stoic, look at the board, trying not to give anything away here. He keeps telling me he thinks he's beat. He thinks I have him. He's trying to guess what I have. He keeps saying he thinks I have pocket queens. He goes into the tank for even longer now, almost 2.5 minutes, and eventually he decides to flick in the chip for the call. We show the pocket kings, and they are good to take down over a $4,000 pot. Running good today. Our big hands are holding, and we're getting paid off. What a difference this session is. The chips are being pushed in our direction. A $5,400 stack. We're up almost $3K on the day. Only been playing now for about 4 hours. Into this next hand, it's a straddle pot, and it folds all the way to the small blind, who just calls $25. Now in straddle pots, with not that many people left to act, sometimes you want to raise with a wide range to try to take down this dead money. Because the small blind didn't raise, he just called. I don't think he has that strong of a hand, and the under the gun player doesn't look too interested either. So I decide to bluff here, trying to take down this dead money. I raise to 125 with a trash hand jack 3 offsuit. Unfortunately, our bluff doesn't work when the small blind makes the call, but we get rewarded flopping 2 pair on jack 8-3, 2 hearts. He checks, I bet $200, and he calls. Turn 6 of clubs, when you get out of line and try to bluff pre-flop with a trash hand like jack 3 offsuit and you flop 2 pair, you got to keep betting on this turn card. So I throw out $300 and my opponent makes the call pretty quickly, and the river's an ace, an interesting one. Kind of hard to get value now if he does have a jack X holding, but he could have the ace high flush draw that now got there with top pair. My 2 pair beats top pair, so I throw out $550. He looks pretty frustrated, but he folds, and we take down a nice one here, adding on to our stack, almost $6,000 now in front of us. After this hand, I had been playing for about 4.5 hours, so I hop in my car, I get on 595 West, and head back home real quick, take an hour lunch break to let out my little buddy Rogue, who's super excited to run around a little bit. After about a 10-minute walk, I head back to the poker room and immediately pick up a premium on the button with pocket queens. Early position under the gun player makes it 30. I make it $120 on the button, and now under the gun, 4 bets to $330. He has a huge stack of about $5,000, and now I'm getting flashbacks to last week, getting coolered queens to aces and kings to aces. God, please don't let me get coolered here. Against a 4-bet, sitting super deep. Sometimes maybe we could 5-bet, but I think a call is just the best play. Let's play post-flop in position. We see a pretty decent board of 5, 6, 9 rainbow, and he continues for $175. The reason I think this board is good is because there's no ace or king on the flop, which is definitely likely a hand that he could be 4-betting pre-flop. Versus 175, I make the call. We see the 7 on the turn, now bringing a 1-liner to any 8. He checks now. I could check back, but I think he's going to have ace-king or ace-queen a lot of the time. I don't want to give him a free river for this big pot, so I throw out $300, and he snap folds. Later he told me he had ace-king, so I'm glad there was no ace or king on the flop, and we didn't get coolered with pocket queens. Moving on to the next one. This session has become the dream session so far. I just pick up big premium hands and I keep winning them. People keep bluffing into me. I keep holding in the big pots and basically winning every single pot. Almost up $4,000 now. And this next hand, under the gun +1, makes it $30. With ace jack offsuit in the small blind, I actually think I should be folding this hand versus an early position raise. but I decide to call and the big blind calls as well. The flop comes out ace high and the action checks all the way around. The turn card's the deuce of clubs, now bringing in a club flush draw. I check again on this turn card, and now the initial raiser throws out a $50 bet. Given the fact that he did not c-bet the flop and that both of us checked again on the turn, I think he can be doing this with a ton of hands here betting $50. So I decide to check raise with my top pair, figuring that I should be good here a ton of the time. I make it $200. Under the gun +1 makes the call, and the river's the king of diamonds. I'm trying to figure out whether I should bet here or check, and I do think against a capable player he could possibly use this king as a scare card. I think when he checks back the flop and then calls my raise on the turn, he's going to have a lot of flush draws. I don't think he has jack 10 for a straight because he would be c-betting that on the flop. He could have king queen for 2 pair, but that's a little bit unlikely. I also think it's possible he could have a weaker ace here, like ace 3, ace 4, ace 5. So I contemplate going for a small blocker bet here, but ultimately I decide to check over to him, allowing him to potentially bluff with his missed flush draws, and he does decide to put out a bet. He makes it $315. By betting this river, he's saying he has better than a 1-pair hand. I think if he had a weaker ace, he would just check this one behind. So I do think he could have a lot of bluffs here. He is a type of player who could potentially turn a king into a bluff as well, trying to get me off a weaker ace. I don't think he's got me beat here very often. For this price, when the flush draw misses, I just decide to pay it off, and he shows us the bad news. Ace king for top 2 pair. He played it very tricky on the flop by checking back, and he ended up winning a pretty big pot off us. To be honest, I am not happy with the way I played this hand. I think I should just be folding pre-flop, but we get punished, making a light call pre, and then calling down on the river here. A little upset with myself of how I played that last hand, but can't be upset for too long. When you look down at black pocket aces in the big blind, the button makes it 40. I 3-bet to 175 here out of position. We're super deep stacked, and unfortunately, he folds. We move on to the next one. We pick up pocket queens later on as well. I raise pretty big out of the blinds and get one call. I c-bet the flop and take this one down. Today I picked up so many big pocket pairs, and unlike the past, every single one of them has held up. We haven't gotten bad beat, coolered, or lost any big pots yet. Cruising along with the session here, moving into the last hand of the night. It's amazing how many big pocket pairs. I think for the 5th time, I look down at pocket queens. The ladies in the big blind, under the gun, limps, under the gun +1 races to 100. I 3-bet to $350. And under the gun +1 makes the call. So we're heads up here over $700 in the middle in a 3-bet pot with pocket queens. The board is 10, 10, 9 rainbow with an overpair on a pretty dry board. I c-bet small and my opponent makes the call. The turn's an ace, an interesting one here. I'm really not sure what I want to do on this turn card. Obviously an ace is an overcard to our pair, but I don't think he's going to have an ace very often. I think ace king would put in a 4-bet pre-flop. We have 2 queens in our hand, so we block him from having ace queen. It's possible he called on the flop with a hand like ace jack, but seems a little bit unlikely. I think his likely holdings are smaller pocket pairs, possibly some straight draws as well. So I bet super small compared to the size of the pot. Just $300 here. If he makes the call, I'm not going to be loving this situation, but eventually he makes the fold, and we are 5 for 5 here today with pocket queens, taking another one down and booking a huge win. $4,200 worth of profit on the day. That is what I'm talking about. Finally, some run good. We needed it, getting ourselves closer to out of this downswing. It's a Saturday night here at the Hard Rock, so I decided to head over to the 1-2 game to splash it up a little bit, get myself a beer. I end up having a little bit too much to drink and getting a little bit out of line here, playing some wild hands. Instead of doing an outro, I think it's better I just wave to the camera. So until next time, I'll see ya.